All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that we've not met face-to-face, Michael Cashman, the Plattsburgh Town Supervisor. I firmly believe on starting on time and being attentive to your schedule and coming out this evening. Perfect timing, Tom. Well, thank you. What I'd like to do is start with the Pledge of Allegiance, second remarks, and then we'll get started. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Folks, I'm really excited by the attendance this evening. Thank you for carving out some time. This is the second time that we've hosted this format. We used to host regional meetings, and you may have attended those regional meetings, but they would be really truncated, and then we would run over to some other location in the town. We don't have another location that we're going to. And this is more free form. We're not doing town business this evening. It's an opportunity for us to interact with you folks as taxpayers and constituents and residents of the region. We will do our best to answer questions. We may have to take some notes and get back to you on some stuff. And then I also invited a local legend of sorts, former radio personality Bob Fuller and resident of the town, to help moderate, just to keep things on track. And also because sometimes people want to come to an event, maybe they just want to observe. We hope that you'll ask some questions or be engaged. But if you don't, I know Bob usually has a couple of questions up his sleeve that he might want to ask as well. We hope that this is an enjoyable evening. We appreciate it. And more than anything, we want you to walk away knowing that this is not your only opportunity to interact with us. We have weekly meetings on Thursdays at 6 p.m. And we have public comment at all of those meetings, between a work session or a regular board meeting. And of course, we're there at Town Hall for you folks to reach out to us anytime. So with that, I'll shut up, and I'll just ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. So.
I'm Chuck Kostick. I'm the new kid on the block. I was appointed in January. Thank you, Michael, Meg, and Barb and Tom for allowing me to join in, and very happy to be here this evening, and hope that we can answer questions or take your comments and take them back and do the right thing.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barb Hebert. I used to be the new kid on the block, but I'm in my third year as a town councilor. So these forums for me are very important because it allows for some participative engagement from folks. So thank you for allowing me to serve.
I'm Jim Coffey. I'm the town attorney. I guess I'm the old kid on the block. Not the oldest kid, I said.
Tom Wood, the oldest kid on the block. I've been around so long I don't know why you people elected me, but I'm still here. I'm doing the best I can. I'd be happy to hear anything that you have to say.
And at this point, I'm going to pass it right over to Bob, and we'll get started.
It is a great turnout, as Michael said. It's kind of a loosey-goosey night. If you've got some questions, all I ask is raise your hand, and we'll try to get to you. And not a lot of structure tonight. That's why they invited me, to make sure that there's no structure tonight. But if anybody has a question to lead off, we'll entertain it right now. If not, I'm going to throw one out. And it's something that, Michael, we've talked about for months and months and months and months and months. And are we gaining any ground on our lawsuit with the city of Plattsburgh's lawsuit with the town of Plattsburgh? Many of us in the town were disheartened to see that happen. And what is the progress of that? Do we see an end here or what?
I'll give you some of the historical information. For those of you that don't know, I think you probably do at this point. We are currently in active litigation with the city of Plattsburgh, brought by the city of Plattsburgh, in regards to some monies that they feel they are owed from the Falcon Seaboard or Saranac Power. In fact, the monies that they are going after are monies that go toward the special district, one of them being the District 3 Volunteer Fire Department that has the primary responsibility to protect that facility. we are very blessed to have volunteer firefighters protecting our community and the investments of these special properties. As we stand today, no, the city has not yielded their position in suing the town. We are doing everything that we can to defend our position and also set ourselves up to be in a position for best possible defense using all tools available. So what does that mean exactly? I'm not trying to talk politics, I'm trying to just let you know that we did do a countersuit, and the countersuit allows us a couple things. One is it allows us to possibly get some monies back through the process, but it also opens us up to getting documents that we wouldn't have been able to had access to if we were not suing them, okay? So a lot of people go, why is the town suing them, the city now? It's a position for us to get documents to better prove the overall situation, okay? If you haven't read it, I would highly encourage you to Google it. It's in the Press Republican. Every member of the board signed off on a op-ed piece recently. We laid out the historical facts of the situation. I could go on at length about my disappointment and my frustration with the situation. The one personal statement that I will put out there is I don't believe that this lawsuit is really about the town and the city anymore. I think it's the mayor, unfortunately, was caught on a hot mic situation, and he made some really bold statements and is having a hard time walking back from it. So that's kind of where we're at, and I can certainly provide clarity or different perspectives if you want to go further on that.
Well, as you and I have talked numerous times, I've sat down with many mayors in the past 15, 20, 25 years. They all knew that this was happening, this was coming to an end, and they'd all, as I mentioned to you earlier, they all knew that this was coming to an end and they had to make provisions for it. And it seems to me that they haven't made provisions for it. And I was kind of taken back. It was like they were trying to take money away from District 3, our volunteer fire department that we're so proud of in the town of Plattsburgh. How dare they, say you can't have that money. We're paying our firefighters in the city of Plattsburgh, but we're not going to help you with your volunteer force.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it, honestly. It's very discouraging.
I also think, I did find a thing in the newspaper that was written by Dennis Curtin, who was one of the original attorneys back in 1992, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
And he pretty much takes the side of the town. I mean, he's not trying to side with anybody, but he's just saying, this is what happened, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what your position was.
Yeah, laying out the facts. I mean, we're not trying to conflate this. We're not trying to get into a street fight, over this. I've been jokingly saying I have a full-time job as the town supervisor, and I have a part-time job putting out or dispelling some of the lies and conflations that the mayor has had. At first, I think he misunderstood some stuff. That happens, right? I mean, but now I think he's just found himself in a position it's hard to walk that back.
And I think the best part was when you said, I think you had said that you were 12 and this agreement was written. So another hot button issue, I think it's becoming.
He was 12?
I was 12.
I was the only one that voted to protect our taxpayers, to protect our fire department, protect things that I thought was necessary at that time. We listened to council. No one brought up any other things with the county. We talked to the school district, and that's what happened. And I voted for that, and I wouldn't take that back.
Another hot button issue, as I mentioned, it was very hot year and a half ago. It's becoming less as the progress moves on to the mausoleums. That one over on the town middle road is looking very, very nice. You and I have talked many times about why is the town in the mausoleum business? It's not like you wanted to. Not like you had your hand up and said, oh yeah, we'll take over these. And thank God some Congress people and the state representatives came forward and helped out with that. But do we see an end at the end of the tunnel with the mausoleum projects?
Yeah. In fact, Jim and I were talking about that, very issue today. Again, I just like giving the landscape perspective for folks that may not be as up to date on this. Back in 2015, an organization called Whispering Maples, both in the towns of Ellenburg and Plattsburgh, these facilities were basically declared defunct or abandoned. And that was by the New York State Division of Cemeteries. They have the oversight and responsibility to make sure that they're being facilitated in a responsible way. In 2015, they reached out to the towns and said, you're going to be taking this over because of a statute. And at that point, we began to fight back to say, whoa, 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 a mausoleum is different than a plot cemetery, okay? There's perpetual care, there's contracts, etc. And I have to credit a lot of people have been involved in this process. Board members, Bernie Bassett, a consultant that we've been using, also Janet, who was our former assemblywoman, was very active when she was in office, Assemblyman Jones, Senator Little, and what we've been doing is actively been working through a process to first and foremost get the facilities up to the level that they should have been years ago. It was a disgrace. These facilities have people's parents and their children's and their loved ones and our veterans. I mean, it was truly a disgrace. So that was the first priority, is get this up to the level that it should have been. Secure perpetual care funds. Jason Dazan, who's the supervisor in the town of Ellenburg, he and I actually went down to Albany, and we went through what I call the governmental gauntlet. We met with about every agency that you can imagine, every branch of government, comptroller, AG's representative, governor's representatives, and we're able to secure the funds and then moving that forward. It's in a period called state receivership. It means a person is temporarily running that organization. The statute has not gone away though, folks, okay? Eventually, those facilities will become the responsibility of the towns. And in fact, the man that's going to be responsible for facilitating it is our town clerk. And in Ellenburg, it will be their town clerk. And the reason that the town clerk will get that responsibility is they already do marriage certificates, death certificates, vital statistics. They're the, for lack of better terms, the secretary for the town, the formal record keeper. And that's really what that is. We still need to go through a number of items before the receivership ends. If you go to the facility now, it looks much better. They're still doing some work, but the official transfer from the receivership's hand to the town's hands will not occur until both facilities, meaning Plattsburgh's and Ellenburg's, are completed. Okay? So ours is a little bit more advanced, meaning further along in the schedule than Ellenburg's. So ours could be completed in the construction phase, but it doesn't mean that we'll take it until Ellenburg's gets to where it needs to be as well. We continue to work with our state legislators to see if we can rework the statute, but I can tell you that we were a case study, and this is what comforts me, because people down in Albany are taking this serious. The first thing that they did is they were able to pass legislation to ban freestanding mausoleums anywhere in the state of New York moving forward. That's a huge step. That's a really huge step. So the next thing that we want to do is to find a way to facilitate ongoing care for these facilities as well. When I ran for supervisor, I knew this was coming down the pike. It's one of the reasons that I ran, because I knew that we could work in concert with our state legislators and our town board and do the moral and ethical thing to protect the loved ones there, but also protect our taxpayers too.
If I can add to that, yeah, that's okay. If I can add to that, when there's an emotionally charged situation such as this, as elected officials, we have tools that we can use. So recently, one of the tools that I use is we are able to participate in webinars that are free of charge, and that kind of helps the learning curve because it's complex. This case is complex. And what was interesting is I was able to participate in a webinar that was on abandoned cemeteries. And it was very enlightening, and took it to heart. And what was interesting is that our particular situation was in fact showcased as one of the first few slides of the presentation. But from that, I learned a lot in terms of the statutes and what we have to follow. And sometimes your mind is going in a different direction to try to propose some things, and sometimes you got to get back on track. But what I'm just letting folks know is that was a great opportunity for me as your town council to learn more about it and again create some fact base that can make me more effective. So just want to add that.
Are other towns throughout New York State having the same problem?
No, they're not. Actually, it's kind of interesting. There aren't many of these freestanding mausoleums. And when I was with Bernie Bassett, and actually his name was Dave Leonard, I represent both Ellenburg and Plattsburgh, the Division of Cemeteries just was absolutely, they just said, no, we're moving the bank accounts, you've got it. I mean, without any money, without a dime. And the cost of these things to redo them and build them, and the burden would have been on the taxpayers of the town of Ellenburg and town of Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh probably could have survived, Ellenburg would have. I mean, and I was on the phone, we said, well, you just can't do that. They said, well, look, we're the division, we're going to do it this way it is. We're transferring, we're calling, the bank accounts are going over to the town now. And it was a very, very difficult thing because under the law, there is a law that the town has responsibility for an abandoned cemetery. So if there's an abandoned cemetery, the law is put, you're supposed to go and mow the grass, that type of thing. This was a totally different thing. And like I said, it's been a long slog and so forth, and everybody here has been very helpful. But the Division of Cemeteries had no intentions of contributing one dime to help out the town. No.
But other towns in the state having the same problem?
There aren't many. The only one was, there was one other, and they just took it over.
They took it over and all the expenses
So
are.
there aren't that many freestanding ones?
No, the thing that is, it's kind of a failed model because once you fill it up, the income is gone, and then it's sort of like, and they talk about perpetual care, it's like saying, I will take care of your car forever. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Forever is a long time. I think Norm had a question.
Yeah, you certainly got some funding through the assembly people and so forth to do the renovations on the mausoleums to bring them up to the proper standard. My next question would be, is there any plans for state assistance in the future on these mausoleums?
Yes, we've already secured, so we secured 2 pots of money. We secured funding to rehab the facilities, then we also secured perpetual care funds, and in the new law, in the new workings down in Albany, is we will be allowed to go back for additional funds. Okay, so it doesn't, just because we secured funds, doesn't mean that it prevents us from going back, you know, say in 20 years or 30 years because it needs a new roof. I mean, the state of New York recognized that this was a black eye on their watch. I mean, the Division of Cemeteries had the responsibility to go in and do oversight and to make sure that the books were balanced and people were doing all those things. So now they're, you know, they're on the hook to help us out long term.
So there'll be no cost to the town of Plattsburgh?
It shouldn't be. That's how we're proceeding forward.
You feel the funds that's going to be coming in from the perpetual care will take care of the expenses of the facility?
I really believe the way that we have set the trajectory is, yes, it will be in a positive way for us. So let me talk about a couple of the model things that we have. So the building itself, is there cost to us in personnel time? Yeah, we're going to have at least a cleaner go in and pull, you know, take the trash out, and you know, they put tile floor down. It used to be carpet. Okay, I mean, like, these are the things that they did to make it nicer, cleaner, easier. So there's some very modest, you know, investments that we have to do. Mow the grass. But for the perpetual care moving forward, they gave us a pot of money. The board will need to make some determinations moving forward. There are still spaces there to be sold, and Debbie and I have talked about this a lot. My general position, okay, I'm one vote, okay? But as we get forward and we need to make some decisions, at minimum, my recommendation is that we have a moratorium for 1 year at least before we consider selling any spaces. And my rationale for that is Ricky needs to understand how to facilitate the paperwork, how to manage. I mean, the towns were not in the business of a mausoleum. If we sell additional spaces, that money would go into the perpetual care fund as well. Okay, so there's some benefit of that. But there also becomes a cost now, though, because you expose yourself to new risk. As soon as you open a spot and you sell that, now the town of Plattsburgh is saying, well, we'll take care of this forever. We're taking a new level of responsibility as compared to just maintaining the responsibility that was given to us. So we do have some decisions to make, but minimally, my recommendation will be to have a moratorium for a year, allow the town clerk to figure out how they need to facilitate that.
But I believe you meant also that people that already had bought and paid for
Yep.
would still be very...
Correct, and that's the last piece that I want to share. So as far as staffing, what we plan to do is to contract with Ellenberg, because they have a mausoleum and a crematorium. Okay? And they have a person that runs the crematorium. What we would do is to contract with them to do the entombments. And the payments come from the estates of people when they pass. Okay? So the town doesn't just, pay for the entombment. It comes through the process of fees and so on and so forth. Okay?
When this first came up, that was on a different board and a different supervisor. This board has done a great job. The previous board also stood up and said, and remember, at this point in time, they're telling us we have to take it over. Well, who's on the board for the division cemeteries? Well, the governor, attorney general. You think that we're going to go to fight, legally, them to say, no, we're not going to take it. I think they've done a fantastic job of putting the pressure on them and negotiating with them to get what we've gotten at this point. That was not easy, and there was sort of a thing hanging over. Okay, you got to take it, and it's this New York State law, and you're supposed to be doing this thing. We had to fight that, and with them on the board. So I think that you should be very proud of the fact that this board, and this, particularly Michael and their previous supervisor, stood up to this. Now the whole board did before too, but that was important, that there was unanimous, and that everyone said the same thing. We are not going to take this, and we had, because of the work that the supervisor did, we had Senator Little and we had Assemblywoman Dupree, and we also had different members from the different parts of the government, and as Michael said, came here and we gave them a tour, and we had each of our departments, the head of each of our departments, whether it was highway, water and sewer, buildings and grounds, everyone, and finance, we had everybody there, and they pointed out each thing that was wrong. And the same thing was done in Ellenberg with their board, and I think that was what turned turned it around to our favor a little bit. But it wasn't easy, and I just want to give credit to people that did it.
Couple questions, how many empty lots is there, for one? And the other part would be, if it's an abandoned cemeteries, you don't sell lots in them, so why should you be selling lots in this if it's abandoned?
I'm going to answer your second question first. I agree. I mean, just from my general position, I don't want the town to be in the business, but we have to look at different models for a number of reasons. The first part of it, and this is probably one of the worst parts of the situation. So Connie Goddard, who's the receiver, she's doing this for free, mind you, okay? The only thing that she's charging is for the travel up here, okay, at cost. She runs the cemeteries out in Queensbury. Like, she's an expert in this area. And one of the things that she's been doing is reconstructing the paperwork for all of this, because that was one of the reasons that it was defunct. Interestingly enough, the former owners had a fire, okay, with some of their records previous. So that's another reason that I don't want to sell spaces, because imagine now you sell all the spaces, then someone comes knocking on the door and says, my husband, my wife, my grandmother, is supposed to be entombed there. I have a contract, well, then what do you do? So, I mean, there's so many scenarios that I could think of.
You can't sell lots in abandoned one now, can you? There's still empty lots in a lot of these old cemeteries like on Route 3 and stuff.
And again, we're not in that business.
Yeah.
Connie continues to operate it as a business right now. She has sold a couple, but she's also had a couple people move bodies, moved loved ones because it was in such a dilapidated state. So.
Michael, are you saying that the state is going to, for perpetually replenish the perpetual care fund?
Not every year.
No, but over time, when it runs out.
It allows us, they're not putting, an X number on it. They're not putting an X year on it. What they've done is they've allowed the towns to go back to the system for perpetual care funds.
Because the reason I ask is this is a building, so obviously it's different from cemetery where bodies are pushed in the ground and it's just grass. I mean, eventually it's going to need a roof. I'm not saying it's going to be today or tomorrow, but 30 or 40 years from now. And certainly, are they going to put money in for a new roof at that time? Or maybe you don't know.
No, I would say I'm as confident as I can be that we have set forth a process that enables us to do what we have successfully done so far. We have secured perpetual funds. No one thought that we would have been able to do what we've done so far. We've already beaten the system back from 2015. They wanted us to take it, we said no. They were going to make us take it, and they weren't going to give us money to rehab it. We got the money to rehab it. They told us they weren't going to give us perpetual care funds. So this is going to be an ongoing process. We're not done. As soon as the building transfers, we're going to continue to work with our state legislators to find models and opportunities to make sure that it is the least burdensome on taxpayers. Because let's be honest, as New York State taxpayers, I mean, you and I have talked about this, taxpayers are still paying for this. It may just not be directly associated with the tax that the town imposes on you. Taxpayers in Buffalo and Syracuse and, Long Island, because the state was neglectful, they did this.
Well, the reason I ask about this perpetual care is because...
Yeah, can I call you back? I'm in a meeting right now.
Because in a regular cemetery, as opposed to a mausoleum, lots that are sold today pay for the perpetual care of those that have died, over time. So it's profitable and it helps to be able to sell lots. And I don't know what is in the mausoleum, and we've talked about it, and I know it can be a headache, and there's a lot of paperwork for the clerk and so on and so forth. But someday down the road, that may be the way that the town could recoup some money to, if the snow breaks the roof or a wall falls in, or, something like that, and the state isn't willing to pony up.
Yeah,
The state, of course, is us again.
Yes,
so.
there are definitely models out there. That's why I'm saying, I'm not going to give the full answer today, not because I'm trying to hold something back. We're still working on some of this stuff, but they did give us, they're actively being reconstructed. They've already identified some money for perpetual care. But my big thing is, as soon as you open the door to something, it's hard to pull back from that.
And I think there's a lot of concerns there, and that's why I agree with Michael completely with the moratorium. I think it's not only the paperwork aspect.
Right.
I think we have to turn to our town attorney and say, and this is pretty new ground, and I'm sure there's not a precedent out there. What are the legal ramifications if we start collecting them? Does that open a door we don't want to open?
And does the town now own the lots? The
No,
plots?
not yet.
No.
No, not now, but when it's turned over to us, then the town will own the spaces.
The
The vacant spaces. And now it would be incumbent on them, if they want to sell them, to keep the papers, and then if I buy one and I want to sell it, then...
Yeah, I think the other thing too, I think Chuck brings up a good point. I don't think there's just this is, first of all, these above-ground mausoleums are rare.
Yes.
But even rarer than that is the town operating them. And I think historically, public institutions like towns don't do well running businesses, maybe competing with other businesses. It's sort of not what town, we pave roads, people, police service, all these services we provide, but being in that business, I think it would certainly be a lot of challenges, and I think Michael made a great point. There's a real, the parties that ran it before, there's problems with records, and we sell them all, then somebody comes and says, hey, I'm entitled to this, and then,
Is there 10 lots or 100?
We don't know yet. We haven't gotten the full formal number yet. There are a lot though. And, but again, the other part to it is it could expose us to a new type of liability that our insurance carrier might say, we're not insuring that. Are you kidding me? Like, we'll insure because it's the building as far as what it is, but we're not gonna allow you to expose yourself to a new type of. So again, we have a lot more boxes to check. I can honestly say, since this has been, that I've been involved with it, I talk to somebody at least every single week that either has somebody there or, meaning that there's a loved one entombed there, or they themselves plan to be there someday. I mean, this is a very active situation for us.
And Michael keeps an open mind, because again, we're trying to ask questions, and I think I asked Michael the question, could there be the opportunity down the road for private ownership, someone to take over? But again, that webinar made it clear, and then Michael helped me understand that that's not something that's in our deck of cards.
The statute doesn't allow
The
for it.
statute doesn't allow it.
But it doesn't mean that it can't change, because remember in 2015, we were told that this was just gonna happen. So that's why I'm staying cautiously optimistic as we continue to move forward. In 2020, we might get the Assembly and the Senate to pass a new law that gives us more flexibility in a different arena. I mean, this will be an ongoing thing, and we'll see where we go.
I think an important thing is the fact that you're going to have a moratorium for a year. That gives you the opportunity to put your costs together and so forth, so you know where you're going, what's happening. So at that point, that's when you can go back to the state and say, hey, look, we want more money.
Well, you don't want to sell any.
Not to continue to beat the dead horse, but I'll bring up one more.
Sure.
Were both mausoleums on our tax rolls? My guess is they're probably in arrears. And are we losing that off the taxes because the town will not be owning both of those mausoleums?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, as a business,
I think they were not for profit.
That's right.
Yeah, they're not for profit.
Yeah, but in the sense that, it's an opportunity that, or actually not an opportunity, it was something done to us. We weren't in the position that made that.
Okay. I'm sure they weren't making any money on it. Let's talk about the planning board change. You had a change in name, but both of us know that it was much more than just a name change. And it sounds very exciting to me. I'm not sure the rest of the town.
I applaud our town board. So our town board has been really active in a number of grants and things. Planning boards, as many of you know, are there to facilitate helping bring new businesses into the community, site plan. In fact, we have a board member here, alternate board member. And last year alone, the town of Plattsburgh saw about 60 businesses between old and new, I don't know what the exact percentage of the split was, that invested approximately $50 million in the town of Plattsburgh. Okay, that's not tax roll investment. That's revamping their buildings and landscapes and a wide variety of things throughout the entire spectrum. What we have found is for the town of Plattsburgh to continue to be really part of that economic hub of this section of the North Country is we need to lead our region. So we changed the department heading from planning to planning and community development. Now, what is community development? Community development is all the grant part of it. Our professional team members write grants, facilitate grants, administrate grants, from the small stuff that are more quality of life, such as Arbor Day grants, We became the first community in Clinton County that got the designation through NYSERDA as a clean energy community, which we're getting about a $100,000 grant for. They helped us secure a $500,000 grant for our water capital improvement plans. So that spectrum is quite wide. So the name change really helps us onboard to new opportunities as well as project the direction that we're moving forward.
Now, there's been a lot of ideas surrounding that, and those are the things that I heard, and I said, boy, doesn't that sound great? And they really did, you know.
And I would just add that this, part of my onboarding to get to the various departments and the work that department does, Trevor and his group, it's just unbelievable. The number of irons they have in the fire and pulling all the pieces of that together. It's just amazing work that they do, and this absolutely is the right step because it's more than just a planning board. It is that community development piece.
I have a question. Sure. It's about this area and the Wallace Hill Road and the proposed development that occurred a couple of years ago on the 40,000 chicken farm. If that's still something that we have to be concerned about, or is it done?
I'm trying to be as direct with you. Could it still happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen? You know, a lot of folks believe that if it was going to happen, it probably would have happened by now. There are a number of requirements that the developer, you know, will need to go through. In fact, the town board will not be the ones that make that decision. We have two different boards that are community members appointed, okay, and they act, you know, very independent, and it's to really take the politics out of that. So it's the zoning board of appeals, and then it's the planning board. And what they do is they have documents that talk about how far back buildings have to be, what type of lighting, parking lot. I mean, there's a litany of things that they need to address. The property that has been identified by this developer, okay, is agricultural.
Could I
Yep.
interject something right here? I've lived on this road my entire life, except the first 7 years of our marriage when we lived in the city.
Yep.
We built our house here on the Wallace Hill Road again. I'm familiar with all the farms that were here and ran one to the next. They were all sustenance farming. They sustained only their families. 23 cows was a big number. This is not an agricultural use per se. This is an agribusiness. Some of the things that I am seeing that could not support an agribusiness, if that totally changes the agricultural zoning, it's now a massive business. This road, and again, the signs just came down, will not allow trucks of a certain tonnage. The signs are up every year since I was a little child. This is a 40,000 chicken farm. How is a truck going to come in and take the eggs out? How is a truck going to legally come in and remove wastes? You're also in a floodplain right there that attaches to a brook. 40,000 chickens are going to leave a lot of waste and create a lot of flies. And we know that flies spread disease. And the other issue that I have with it is, since it was a sustenance farm, this entire road, that changes agricultural use to a mega business. I think it's something that the new planning board needs to discuss to protect other communities from this happening again. As you see, all the sustenance farms are gone. There's not one left here on this road. So we, the living people in this community, are going to be affected by an massive business that is detrimental to us. And I think that as a new planning board and new direction, you really need to look at, I'm not talking about somebody who wants to put a few goats in their yard. You really need to look at protecting communities in the future.
I'd like to respond. I don't disagree with you, okay? If I lived on the Wallace Hill Road, I would not want a chicken farm next to me. Let me be very clear, okay? I support everything that you say from the sense of, I don't think it's a good location, okay? And often, personally, when businesses come in and, because they're looking, they do site review and they're kind of saying, I'd like to move in the area. There's a number of businesses that I don't want for a number of reasons. Maybe they don't treat their employees well, or, so we can get on a whole list, but let me focus in on this. We have town roads, okay? And a good example of, there's kind of a hierarchy in government. You folks see us on a day-to-day basis. We're gonna bump into each other when we go food shopping or pumping gas, but unfortunately, there is a lot of rules and regulations that are higher than our ability to manage and facilitate. Agricultural has an element of that, okay? Kind of like the roads. We don't, per se, declare how fast 87 is going to be, but it cuts through the town of Plattsburgh. So see what I'm talking about? There's elements to that where wherever we can, legally, we will facilitate something that is to the best of our community. I promise you that. No one on our board is flying the flag saying, we need to bring this business here, because it's not bringing huge amounts of jobs. It's not bringing, any of those things that people would often say, well, why are they recruiting it? We didn't recruit it. We don't want it per se, but there may be things that require us to give them a fair hearing for consideration, because they may meet the standards of agricultural from the county, the state, etc. So,
I do know that agricultural, New York is a right to farm state, and agriculture is pretty sacrosanct in our state. So getting that designation changed, I don't even know how one goes about to get a zoning designation changed.
Well, when, in Peru, when they took all the farms and combined them into one massive farm, legislation had to be created to have such a massive farm. That should have happened in this instance, or something should have been done. Agreeing to a 3,000 chicken farm and giving them way in, and then all of a sudden it changes to 40,000? 3,000 was bad enough.
That was a few years ago. I wasn't.
It wasn't,
it wasn't
a few years
and I will tell you, we as a board, okay, benefit from some of the decisions of the people that sat before us, and we also pay for the sins of the people that sat before us. And one day, guarantee it, someone will be like, Michael Gershman! I mean, like, I will have done or said, something like all of us. I can't, I don't have a magic wand for it, but what I can tell you in the most sincerest terms, look you right in the eye and say, we will do and we will continue to do whatever we can to protect you as taxpayers, you as citizens, for you, the quality of life for yourself. People that are on our boards take it very serious.
And the waterways.
Yep, absolutely.
Those waves running into that brook.
Yep, absolutely.
And there's a floodplain going right through there.
Absolutely.
There's always flood in the spring. That whole section of road in that brook floods over.
Yeah.
Those species are going to go right into Lake Champlain.
But that's why I say, and I don't want to say that it won't happen, but because of some of the things that you're saying, there's standards that have to be met. If it was that easy for the developer to have met all the standards, how long has this been talked about now? It's been talked about for a bigger amount of time. Well, they haven't met the standards yet. So, there's, I don't want to say it's not coming, but I'm optimistic that, he is evaluating a number of things. And there will be public hearings, there will be opportunities for the neighbors and to come out and to share new information and perspectives. I mean, this is not a behind the curtain situation at all. Okay? I'm gonna let Bob facilitate.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the reason we came down for natural gas on 374,
Yeah.
I talked to you on it. You gave me a phone number for the guy, the gas and electric. I called him, and because of Church Street being 1,720 something feet long, I think he told me, to get natural gas up our street, to get as far as north, it would cost every person on that street an extra $7,000 just to get it installed, to get it to us. I've got quite a few people who wanted to come, could make it tonight, that would go to a board or do a petition or whatever. We'd like to see it come up. Church Street does got some value. There is the church, the rectory, the hall, and 3 houses. But once you get onto 374, I own 2. Kenny's here, Norm owns 3, down below the hills even. My 2 sisters and my 2 nieces and my nephew are already hooked on. But we just can't afford the price to get it across Church Street. Can the town go after a grant, or can the town push the gas and electric? I know you said they have a way of doing it now, but there's other ways around to put the pressure to go a different direction. The guy said, you know, he only pays free for 100 foot for each lot. He said, well, your lots are bigger. Well, we pay more taxes than the people probably with a 100-foot lot or a 70-foot lot. You know, we should be deserved a little more too. But that wasn't the main killer, just extra land there. If we got the Church Street part done, that's the biggest thing. I know Norm's got some comments he wanted to throw in there, but I do have another question for you after, well, but for now, we'll finish this one up.
Sure.
Where is there an area where natural gas has been expanded in the town of Plattsburgh where the residents have had to pay?
Cumberland Inn.
They are paying for the main line going in?
They've had to pay for some extension areas.
Which portion of the Cumberland
We
Inn?
pay a surcharge, everything that's, every pipe that's out there pays a surcharge. I live out there.
Could you say how much it was? They
Well,
want
I don't know if
$7,000
they
a person up there.
They put it on your bill.
I can, let me just give you one example to hope this might give you some stuff, because you're not the only ones in the community, okay, that have expressed this. I think my personal perspective, I'm frustrated because I feel as though there were individuals, either from NYSEG, maybe board members, that part I don't know, NYSEG. The way that they communicated it sound like once the Public Service Commission opened the franchise or provided corner-to-corner franchise, that everybody and their brother was going to get natural gas. Okay? Well, maybe the opportunity to get natural gas was there if you paid a premium price. At the end of the peninsula in Cumberland Hedge, because of there's large black spots, okay? Yep, McDonough Farm. There isn't the payment of that. The people at the end of the peninsula, okay, who may want it, okay, and in fact, if they could get it to their lot line, would be in that, 100 foot or what have you, would get it. But it's the other section here. And we've had those conversations. In fact, we held 2 that I know, that I can think of, at least 2 public forums with NYSEG. I will reach out to Mike Keenan again and see if we can get another one of those organized. We'll put some pressure on that. I just called the Public Service Commission today on some other issues, Spectrum. But we'll try to re-engage on this and get some clarity on it. I am not making false promises though, because there's nothing worse than me saying you're getting natural gas at a cheaper price and you say, but you said, and it not being able to happen.
And Norm, I think Dottle Road too, I think there's an additional charge down through there. Don't hold me on that, but I did talk to a couple people there, Tommy Gordon and I think Bobby Robart both said that there was.
Going back when I served on the board, I was part of the negotiation of the franchise with NYSEG through Falcon Seaboard, the line coming down and so forth. NYSEG committee was very strong about cherry picking our community. They wanted to do Route 3 and other areas. And we set them up for 5 different areas and said, these are the areas you people are going to do. And of course, it went through the Public Service Commission and so forth. And I understand that about 3 years ago, the town board had the opportunity to put another list together as to where the biggest impact would be. And I look at our area, and it's not only the people that could probably afford it, but it's the issue of we qualified most of the people along our road for the HUD grant, which got us public water. And my point is, when you get this kind of impact on the difference of fuel costs, it's a big savings for the people of that low income status. Now, as part of our senior housing, we changed from oil to natural gas, and was less than half the cost, even after we did all the renovations and so forth. So my point is, there's a real savings for the people that qualify for HUD. And I think the board, which you did probably 3 years ago, if I can remember, chose different areas that you wanted them to do. You had a list.
We didn't choose the roads. So what happened was when Marty, and I'm just putting it in context so you know like approximately the time. Marty Mannix was, I believe, the deputy town supervisor, and he was working with Bernie. Like that was one of his pet projects. And the Public Service Commission expanded what is often referred to as a town-wide franchise. Okay, so it's not just these little incubated areas. Lots of people were getting postcards and saying, do you want the gas, do you not want the gas? There are people up on, is it Woodcliff? Down in the South Plattsburgh area, down in, it's up near Clinton Community College. Yes, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that I'm saying the right stuff. There are people up there, okay, that are just as mad, I'll tell you, because there were multiple maps that were occurring over the course of NYSEG's potential build-out, and some of the previous maps had roads and locations on it. Then when they came to publish the most recent maps, the roads that were on exhibit, say, A, were not on exhibit B or C or D. So we continue to push back, and we'll push back wherever we can, but the big part of it is NYSEG really is a private entity, and the worst part of it is the customer service from NYSEG has dropped off tremendously because they are now, I think, based out of Spain, and the level of customer service is horrible. So I don't deny anything that you're saying. I'm just saying that we have to work creatively to see what we can do for you.
Is this something that you feel the residents of this particular area should get a petition together?
Yes.
And circulate, present it to the town board?
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it does not go up Trudeau Road though, right? I think it just shoots straight up to Bucks Corners. It might be worth their while to look at it from Trudeau Road up and then back down. You're not going to have that big blank. There's some additional building going up on Page Drive up off there. Just a suggestion that
There's got a lot of blank spot coming down the hill where the quarry owns the pits and all the hills, there's no houses.
yeah, you're right there.
We'll work with you
Trying
folks
to
to do
picture
what we
houses
can.
there, but there's a pretty
On the bottom of the hill, there's no- you ain't got much.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's something that could be presented to them that might
Yeah,
make it
1,700,
more palatable.
25 feet or something, just over 1,700
They're going to
feet.
sell a lot to the church.
Yeah.
Oh, and even like someone had these empty lots, you're saying they're dark spots. If gas is going by them, we've got a lot better chance of somebody doing something with them lots.
Well, you're right. It's an additional service.
Let me just use one other example. So there is a developer in the area, talk about Spectrum, and they did not want to invest $50,000, truly $50,000, okay, to run a couple of lines across the road and up to a couple of networks. Anybody here have cable? Okay. Cost, you know, a significant amount of money. Some people have cut, okay. But for the amount of houses that were in this new development that was occurring, they would have made their money back in like 3 months. But they didn't want to put the money for it. So we end up working with a local real estate company and putting pressure and having some conversations. So again, we'll do what we can to help you out, but we can't force them to do it, but we can use the political and the will of the community.
Most of the people that are in here looking for the natural gas have done the conversion, and they spent $5,000-6,000 changing the furnaces and so forth. We're now running off of propane, with the anticipation of natural gas. So, we certainly appreciate getting this thing moving. And if it means petitioning, we'll get together, we'll get a petition to the board.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can petition NYSEG or the cable company or whatever. The only people that can force them to do this is the Public Service Commission. If the Public Service Commission says you don't have to do it, they won't do it.
Well, Public Service Commission has complete control over them. They already have, they're
They're
getting,
monopolies.
they want to know how much money they're making and if they can afford it and all this other stuff.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, not just NICEAG, we'll work with PSC and you folks, and we'll use all the resources at our disposal.
I'd like to backpedal just a little bit. We were talking about the zoning in the town of Plattsburgh. 40 years ago, when I moved into the town, I looked at all the other towns in the area. And I think the town of Plattsburgh residents should be very proud that we've got the planning and the zoning board. I mean, you guys cross your Ts, dot your Is, you do a great job. On the lighter side, let's talk about something happening at these forms of the park. Is it this year? We introduced the dog park over there.
We did.
And how has that been going?
Woofable. Or wonderful. Yeah, we worked in partnership. I'll answer the question, and then I know this woman here has a question. We worked in partnership with Schuyler Falls on a shared services project. We received a $10,000 donation from Casella, and we were able to create a small dog and a large dog, because you don't want your little pups and the big pups, running together, for the old pool or basin that the town used to use. So it's a dog park with a water feature, and it's really going over swimmingly.
I would just add to that, we had opening night of T-ball last night, so I'm spending a lot of time at the East Morrisonville Park, and it's completely amazing the number of people that are there with their dogs in that park every night. Every night we've been there, it's 15, 20 people that are with their dogs, and that was just a great idea and really kind of a great reuse of that park. So it worked out exceptionally well.
And the people are policing themselves as far as,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Bob, I don't see anything. I mean, the people are under control, and it's always neat and clean in there. I know our buildings and grounds folks are out there quite often, but I think overall they're really taking really nice care of that park.
It's natural gas.
Yeah.
And I'm not a pessimist, I'm an optimist. This is probably my last resort. But where we live on Route 2, it apparently was no facilities land when we bought it. Because I ended up having to go to Public Service Commission to get electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Because are you familiar with Route 3 and then where the Bucks Corners Road goes? Well, my husband said about, I think, what did he say? He said 200, more than that, feet where we live from the gas line. And I've been after, and I said, the minute gas went up there, but of course they wanted to get it to the Saranac School because that's state. They wanted to get it to the prison because that's state. And $10,000, and we don't have that kind of money. We live on a fixed income. And I've been to NYSEG, I don't know how many times. I haven't gone to Public Service Commission, but it probably won't. It did help me for the electricity because they had to give us electricity.
Sure.
Now, the question, or the answer they say is, we're not without heat because there's other means.
I've added it to the list.
But fuel oil is just out of sight for somebody that lives on a fixed income.
Before anybody leaves tonight, I did bring business cards with me, so if anybody wants to stay in contact too, please, I'll make sure to give you my phone number and email, and we'll stay in contact on any issues that are going on too.
Michael, could you speak to the $24 million capital plan the town has going on right now?
I bet you could speak about it.
No, that's not my job, man.
So we did. We are moving forward with an approximately $24 million water, wastewater capital plan. It is focused in on three things. Health and safety. It's also about sustainability and economic development. What do those three things mean? First and foremost, you want to be able to rely on good water for your community. It's the lifeblood of who we are as a people, right? The sustainability factor is also relates to, think of restaurants. Every time there's a boil water alert, a lot of times those businesses have to throw out the food that they've prepared. You know, it's a drain on them, it's a waste. And then the economic development, a large part of the reason that we're seeing various developments in our town is we have those types of services through wastewater and water. I would argue that our infrastructure has not been taken care of at the level that it should have over the years. We can spend a lot of time finger wagging as to why it didn't or did. I like to say that we should take the politics out of the water and we should just focus on the infrastructure. I'd rather spend time working on solutions than blaming people of the past or how we got there. To date, we have worked on several water towers. We're putting them into a maintenance agreement plan, which means that each year certain items will get prepared and fixed and worked on again, so that the long-term trajectory is, it's part of a process. We're not waiting at the whims and wishes of the board. It's part of an ongoing plan. Yes, the question usually comes about is, what about the tower right outside of exit 37? Is that going to ever be fixed? It looks disgusting. Yes, it's going to be repainted and sandblasted. We also are doing currently the one out in Cumberland Corners near Cumberland 12. You can actually go out and see it. They're putting rigging on it right now. It will be tented. It's sandblasted. They have to be drained so that they can go inside. I mean, these are some big projects. So the approximate cost of the total program is about $24 million. But what this board has done, and I thank them for it, I really mean this, because we're actively and aggressively going after grants, and we secured one $500,000 grant. And you might say, well, that's not a lot of money, but every money that we can get reduces the amount of money that we're spending in the overall capital plan. We do have funds that are in our, say, rainy day fund, funds that should have been used earlier. We're applying that to the overall process. We'll go through a process of bans and bonds and long-term projections for debt. But overall, this board has set forth infrastructure as a top priority. And I would argue that is a top priority of a municipality, is to make sure that you have good infrastructure. That kind of captured?
But it's not only water.
No, we'll also be doing some wastewater as well. We'll be doing
Lift stations, if I'm not.
lift stations, pump stations. We're working on a new 2 million gallon tank on the tank farm. We're also working on a wellhead development. If you go by Nate Carrier, you'll probably see like all these large sand mounts, and you're like, what's going on there? We're actually scouting for water. We've had a lot of good results so far. It's about a 2 to 2.5 year process though, because first you have to scout water, okay, or identify water source. You have to test it. Then you have to get Department of Health to certify. I mean, there's the litany of things that we need to go through.
The other thing I would add on this is there's no alternative. It's not like say we can survive with poor water. Can't, I mean, that's just what's that?
Yeah, and I give our water, wastewater department a lot of credit, because one of the things that I've noticed in my conversations with them is that they're introducing, or they may have introduced, is preventative maintenance. That's very important. It's behind the curtain, behind the scenes, but in order to keep the infrastructure to where it should be, as sustainable, is you've got to have preventative maintenance behind that.
Absolutely.
And from the public safety side, which I can speak to, obviously this is going to add a lot of redundancies to the system. So that there's the difficulty with a particular pump station, there's going to be redundancies built in that are going to prevent some issues. The capacity is going to be increased. The head pressure is going to be better for fire hydrants. So from the fire suppression side, there's going to be a lot more water available to use if we have one of those incidents.
My second half of my question I had earlier for you. On infrastructure.
Right after him, we'll go to you.
She's not going to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
She won't like me, so she can't.
Go ahead. I'll go after.
Well, you're just talking infrastructure and stuff. When I was highway superintendent, quite a while back, on the base, when we were taking it over,
Yeah.
the drainage, everything was in really bad shape then. And now,
Still is.
it's getting worse, where some of the roads are worried about caving in. Are you going after grants, or is the rest of this whole town gonna have to foot the bill to do a lot of maintenance? Some of them drainage pipes and stuff are 20, 25 feet in the ground and really bad shape. It should have been looked at more even when the base was taken over, but now it's getting worse in the last 20 years. Is there grants out there to take some of them, or can cut down on the width of some of them roads?
Sure. I think one of the things that you've probably learned about me tonight is I'm very shy. We ask for money all the time. I mean, and we're doing our best to identify the resources that are available to us. I mean, you talk about the sins and the blessings of the past. You know, some of the stuff that we took over from the old Air Force Base. You know, the federal government didn't meet New York State standards. They met the standards that they declared at the time, and there's really poor infrastructure there, and so on and so forth. I have a meeting coming up with Congresswoman Stefanik. I actually met with her a year ago in her office and went line by line with our capital plan. I mean, these are the things that we're talking about, talking with our assembly members, our senators. Our board talks about it. There are some funds that have been building up in some of our capital improvement opportunities. Technology has also changed a lot too, and with Tim Dubray at the head of the department now, he and I have talked, and he plans to move some stuff forward. We will need to do some studies to find out what's the best thing. You kind of alluded to this concept of what's called a road diet, okay? Out in the Air Force Base, you might have lanes that are, 4 across. Maybe they don't need to be 4 across because, the activity out there really has changed. Well, if you change it to just, 1 lane and 1 lane, you've now reduced on the amount of infrastructure that you need to maintain for paving and pipes and culverts. So these are all the things that we're going through
Well, they do
systematically.
make a lot, I know some of them pipes are 8, 10 foot around, they're
Yes.
big pipes. But the state sleeve one up in Katyville, right by the overpass, and that's a big thing now. Instead of trying to dig, being that deep, they're sleeving them, and then they put that slurry in them and
Yeah.
it dries them, and it's just as good as a new concrete pipe.
Yeah, I'll give you one example. At the end of Wallace Hill here, okay, we worked with Clinton County Soil and Water Conservation last year, and we got a $14,500 grant. Now, you hear that number, and someone might say, well, that's not a lot of money. Well, guess what? We were able to fix a culvert pipe on a critical section of our roadway. I don't care if it's $100, folks. I mean, we're going after funds and identifying projects.
Well, you have a lot in this town, not even talking about the base, 'cause that pipe there
Yeah.
was sagging in even back when I was there. It's always
Yeah.
been on the list, but it's just a big project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go to this one.
Okay, we live up in Thunderbird Heights for
Yeah.
50 some odd years. This burning has got to stop. You've got to find a way. We have a pool, and he burns constantly, maybe 6, 10 feet up in the air. We've called the sheriff. Fire department's been there once or twice, and nothing gets done. They just give him a warning. It's not right. He has no respect for anybody, and like I said, we have a nice pool. Our son has a pool and a hot tub, and down the street, he has a pool. I mean, we've got ash in our pool. We've got ash in our driveway. It's terrible.
Have you ever had a chance to speak with anyone from DEC?
I don't know, I've talked to so many people, nobody can do it.
Not a sheriff's,
Let's-
not a policeman.
No, we're gonna connect. DEC really has the primary responsibility for that type of stuff. and we'll have some conversations.
Because it's terrible. You can't sit out, the smoke is so bad, you don't enjoy your yard.
Were they,
They're taking trees from other people's property and bringing it to theirs, they're burning wood, they're burning everything. You name it, and they're burning even garbage.
At the town, you need a permit to burn.
Well, he says he has one, but I don't know.
And if you don't, you can be fined now.
Oh, they've already told him that, but that doesn't
Yeah, but
make
whether
any
they'll do it or
difference.
not is,
that's what I'm saying. There's a couple of things that we might be able to do there.
It's bad, it really is.
Mark, we can check with that because there's.
Regarding your $24 million.
Yes.
Yep.
That you can get, infrastructure thing. I realize the water tanks are a very important issue. They've always been, over a certain number of years, that you would require the proper maintenance. Your funds are going to be going toward the water tanks and your pump stations and so forth.
A number of things, not just those.
Okay. The next question would be, as far as new infrastructure, other than what's on the airbase. Back years ago, when this thing was being converted from the Air Force to the town, there was a major concern as to what needed to be done to bring these pump stations up to date, bring up some of these lines and so forth. None of it ever got through. It got shoved right through, and they proceeded without doing any of the maintenance that's necessary. And the question is, do you have money set aside in this $24 million for anything going on over the airbase and new infrastructure?
The biggest thing that I'd encourage you to do is, one, if you want, go online. Okay, we have a section of our website that's specifically established for the capital plan. You can see the map of a bunch of activities. You can download materials. You come into town hall. I'll be happy to walk you through a number of the projects. Brand new infrastructure, because people will often ask more globally, can we get sewer, or can we get water in various locations of the town? I would very much like to address some of that stuff, but the big part of it is we have to look at the infrastructure that is crumbling or deficient at the moment. We have to do that. If your roof is blown off, you don't put a new patio on first, or hopefully you don't put a new patio on. And that's what we're doing, is we're going back, and I agree with you. There are a number of things that were not addressed years ago, and that's why we're going through the punch list and trying to get caught up on things, and also put things in preventative maintenance programs, so that, not set it and forget it, but set it in a way that we can make sure that it keeps moving along in a trajectory that's manageable, fiscally responsible, takes the politics out of things, where people are just saying, oh, well, we don't need to spend money on that anymore. We'll go do a pet project over here, and the people that have been putting money in, as taxpayers aren't benefiting from the taxes that they've been putting in. And then as far as the old Air Force Base, those are exactly the conversations I've been having with the Congresswoman and our federal senators as well, saying we need some of these resources.
Well, we had a lot of growth in the town as far as the expansion of infrastructure during my term on the board. It was one of the biggest things, lighting districts, water and sewer districts and so forth. And that's basically set the footwork for what's developed in the town at this time. This stuff is all in place. I can remember some of those pump stations up on the air base. Lots and lots of money to bring those things up to the standards. We just got bypassed.
And if you want to talk about, what to me, one of the biggest things that we're doing as far as new infrastructure is we're working on well. Okay?
Yes, I understand.
So we're doing a little bit of everything, but one of the major parts of this capital plan, though, is looking at the stuff that's in the ground currently or up in the air for the water towers, and taking care of them.
Well, there's part of that. The project is, they're working on the manholes out on the base. Those are all being done. And I think there is some sleeving involved.
Yep, we've done baseline sleeving.
Michael, I think it's important to say to the people that although you have a $24 million capital plan, that $24 million is not paid by all of us. That
Correct.
there are special districts.
Correct.
And when we start talking the base, That's their own special district. And let's say, I don't remember what the figures are, but let's say it's a $4 million project to replace manholes and pump stations or whatever. That 4 million belongs to the base, and most of the people on the base that will be paying that in their special district are commercial. So that, whatever that chunk of
Oh, yeah,
capital
absolutely.
plan, that is their problem and not ours to pay for.
Yeah, but, yes, there's, part of that gets sliced and diced depending in, the sections of the town. But the town is responsible
Correct.
for the $24 million facilitation.
Okay, right here.
I just have a statement again,
Sure.
and it's concerning the usage of the land for agricultural. Sustenance farms and homesteading is not the same as an agribusiness. And we will, if this proceeds, and as you said, at night, we will suffer the consequences. The new planning board, the new development planning board, really needs to define or something to give protection to residents. This is now a residential area. I'm not opposed to it being labeled as agricultural, but seeing it as a sustenance or a homestead, these were homesteads. They sustained their families. This is an agribusiness.
But what I was saying before though is, we don't give that designation though. That's
But
the
is there
problem.
any way that the planning board can give such a designation? Relook at laws, whatever.
No, that's
So it could
the,
just land in front of your house? I don't know where you live. but-
Clayton, there's that layering of government was what I'm saying is, Clayton County, the state, federal government, et cetera, all passes various rules, regulations, and laws that trickle down to us, okay? And my commitment to you is whatever resources that we have to protect you, we will leverage those. But the agricultural districting in this particular case is not facilitated by us. So we, and I don't know how to explain it. We can certainly sit down with our planning folks and I can, I'll share materials with you rather than speak in kind of vague terms, because I don't mean to try to make it seem like we're hiding something. I want to give you examples. But the problem is, we don't have the ability to challenge some of the upward decisions, particularly in the agricultural arena, because they are so protected.
Okay, I have one other question then. The Tom Miller Road is commercial now?
Commercial, I believe, yeah.
Laws changed that. That was all agricultural. So now, that's what I'm saying. Planning board doesn't have the right to change something for protection in a residential area. It changed on the Tom Miller Road. There's one farm that's on the end, but is that all industrial right to the end of that?
There can
defunct farm?
be, you can have mixed use. I'll give you an example of some of the situations that we had. If anybody read the newspaper last year, the town was sued because of a mixed-use multifamily house on Melody Lane. Okay? The town of Plattsburgh, the board made determinations, they sided with the residents and they said, we believe that the residents, we're going to side with the residents. The developer then said, you don't have that right. We're meeting all the punch list of all the other decisions above and blah, it's a long, complicated thing. They sued. It's called an Article 78. And they won. Yes, twice. So I'm not saying that the planning board, I can't make a determination, nor will I guess what the planning board will say or do. What I can say is, those members are committed to doing the best of their ability with the tools that are available to protect you as taxpayers and residents. I really believe that.
While following the law.
Yeah, while following the law.
Following the law.
You want the law to be revised.
Actually, it's not a
and
planning
repealed.
board decision, it's a zoning, it's first
Right.
goes through the zoning.
Right.
They're the ones that
Yep.
are the first
Yep.
after the county and after the state.
Yep.
Then it's the
Exactly.
town zoning.
Yep.
So not for challenging, but to try to make people aware, I go through zoning, I go through state, I go through government, to just make aware what has.
I will get you connected with our staff members at the town to give you the resources to make, to understand who makes certain overlay decisions and determinations so that you have the same information that we have. Whatever we have, we'll give you.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For what it's worth, it hasn't come before the planning board, so.
Yeah.
Michael, can you talk a little bit about, give us a progress update on the Saranac River Trail down there off Lapeer Lane? And talk about the importance of it, not only to our community in the town, but how it connects into the city and how important this is.
We're talking about the city?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just joking. So from the mouth of the Saranac into Lake Champlain all the way up to Saranac itself, there is a trail, okay, that's been designated the Saranac Trail and Saranac Greenway River Trail. The town of Plattsburgh is the first community along this route to develop what's called a node or a spur, just a fancy word for kind of an outlet section. It'll be opening up in the month of July. It will have a wide variety of activities for all ages and abilities. We'll have an outlet to put in kayaks and canoes because we're on the what is it, the northern border? Northern Canoe Trail. Yep. And we've worked in a public-private partnership with the CVPH Health Foundation and the New York Health Foundation to help facilitate this on behalf of the town of Plattsburgh. It's a really spectacular thing. I promise you, you'll go there and you'll be just gobsmacked by it. Ultimately, the idea is that each community along the Saranac will have one of these kind of unique parklets that provide unique opportunities to learn about nature and to engage and to recreate. We're probably about 95% there. We're almost there. And it's in the hamlet of Morrisonville. It's part of what was called an LWRP, a lake waterfront revitalization program. We've had a number of projects identified. The Katyville Beach is another one that we want to do some work over near Treadwell's Mills. We're working at another one in Cliff Haven. So there's a lot of projects there.
Do we have a number of paving projects scheduled for this summer? We talked about infrastructure a little bit earlier.
I'm going to let Tom hit that one because he actually said an interesting thing to me a couple of days ago.
I did?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think about me?
I said something interesting? No. No, there's, every year we do so many miles of road. It depends how much money we have in the budget and what the cost of well, we're actually getting costs down because we have a new joint of line. So the county got a lower price from them than from our regular place. So that's helped a little bit. Can't remember exactly how many miles it's doing, but last year they did. Let's see, Hammond Lane. No, we're doing. What is the one we're doing this year? That's longer one.
I'm the only one on Cumberland Ave.
Well, yeah, we're doing, yeah, your area, we get out, yeah, a couple of things. But they try to pick roads that, like the Baker Road, there's a lot of more traffic. There's trucks, a lot of trucks going through, heavy trucks. And before they deteriorate to the point where, if you've driven through the city, where you see what you hit when you go through the city, there's cracks. You know, I didn't notice them. I went to the highway superintendent and said, why are we paving this road? When I drive along here, it's really smooth. He said, yeah, did you look at all the cracks in there? That means it's going to be starting to go. So they try to keep ahead of it and pave those roads that are need the most, but also there's the plan to go around the whole community over time. Now, some roads don't get done quite as quickly, because there's not that much traffic on them, and we have to cover a lot of territory. So we work with together with sometimes well, with Daniel Morris, sometimes with Scholar Bell, sometimes with Town Shared Services, you know, they help us with the trucks and things if we need to, when we're doing this. The Highway Department goes on 12-hour shifts, Monday through Thursday in the summer, so that instead of having to take all their equipment out to pave and then bring it back, they can stay out longer, and that saves transportation, saves money, saves time. What was I supposed to say, Michael? I can't remember.
And I think you get the highlights. The last thing that I would say is our highway superintendents over the years, and a number of us have done this, we get out to Albany to lobby for what's called CHIPS money. It's not like, you know, salt and vinegar. Mind you, if you want to, you know, drop some off, that'd be great. But we have to be in front of our legislators constantly, you know, for the funds for infrastructure money. So we actually take chartered buses. The Highway Association actually charters a bus. We leave at about 3:30 in the morning. We go down and we spend the day in front of our assembly members and the other legislators around the state. Because remember, when Albany doles out money, they dole it out in pockets to different communities, and we want to make sure that we're getting our fair share. So that's how we provide opportunities to take care of infrastructure as well. It's not just about writing the checks or paving the roads. It's about seeking the opportunities to make sure that the funds are there year after year after year so that we can do that work. We are on a rotation, and we do the best of our ability. Our highway department, I would argue, is one of the best in the county. I really mean that.
I hate to keep everybody here. I have one more question, maybe a two-part. I want to talk about town court. And a lot of people maybe don't realize how busy that town court is. I mean, it is a zoo. And we have court Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's packed down there. Is there any thoughts in the future about moving it, getting it out, and so there's more room for the whole town court? That's the first part of my question.
Well, we don't do just those 2 days. They alternate on another day too.
Oh, they do?
And every other week, one of them takes another day, because we can't handle all the cases.
They're approximately the 44th busiest court in the system. And you're like, well, why might that be? 87 has a huge part of it, honestly.
Especially when they're going to construction sites.
Yep. So, yeah, in Cumberland. So that's part of it. We have 2 elected judges. We have 2 court clerks, and then the 2 assistants. And they do a lot of work. They do call-outs in the evening. I mean, this is one of those jobs that the state police and the sheriff's department call them to do arraignments in the evening. Years ago, interestingly enough, when you were a judge, the sheriff might bring the individual that had gotten in trouble to the person's house. They used to have a sign outside their house. But now that they get called in and they have to do an arraignment, and we are a very litigious society, and a lot of those rules and regulations have changed a lot, and I think that they do the best of their ability. Justice Mannix is new. I think he's still getting his feet wet, but there's a lot to learn there. As far as moving outside of the building, I don't think that we necessarily need to move outside of that building. You know, might we need to in the future? Sure. You know, I think you always have to leave leave that open to something. I think you're probably more likely to see the highway department or water needing to move potentially in the future. Our town hall building, in my opinion, isn't the most efficient, but we do our best with the resources that we have.
One thing I would add too about the volume, one of the reasons for the volume is the quality of our justices. And state police know when, you know, they know, and they're outstanding justices, and they follow up. They go to New York City each and every year for training, all 4 of them. So it's something that's done right, because if it's done wrong, it really creates very serious problems. So it's a real tribute to the quality of the people we have on the bench.
Yeah, you can do it.
When he says 4, just remember 2 of those are court clerks.
Yeah.
And they are very good and very knowledgeable. If we didn't have them, we'd really be in trouble.
Yeah, because the justice can do an arraignment for an adjoining town. Okay, so someone could get picked up in Peru, but they may choose to do an arraignment in Plattsburgh because the judge is available, or Dannemora, so on and so forth. So sometimes that's why we're busy. We're doing adjournments, doing those for other towns.
Now, is it possible or feasible, or Bob, you're crazy, to add in another judge? Because I know that Jim is busier than all get out, Kevin was busier than all get out, now we got Marty that's busier than all get out, you know? Is there enough volume there to support 3 judges? A town the size of ours?
We wouldn't want to go
support
with the
3
last one,
judges?
that's you're crazy. We'll go with the others.
I think what you're going to find in the judicial world is that they're going to start doing consolidated court systems, and that might provide some different efficiencies. Fun fact, Justice Pat, who was on the bench for approximately 20 years, did 180,000 cases with no ethical violations, and only two cases overturned. I mean, that's amazing. And, you know, but as far as the third judge, I don't think you'll see us move in the direction of the third judge. I do believe this circuit that we're in will start to maybe bring an Ellenburg and an Altona, just some of the other towns together to find some ways to create some more efficiencies, but it's government and it works at glacial speed.
Norm?
Not to change the subject, but the growth of the town of Plattsburgh along the Tom Miller Road, we see a lot of growth there. And my question would be, is the town pursuing the county to do something with that road, widen and so forth? I know that when we fought many years to get the connector road from Cumberland Head out to the ferry. It took us a long time to get it. It was one of the biggest improvements there was in the town. And my question is, do you have any plans at all to pursue the county to get that road widened with all the growth that you've got coming?
What we are currently doing is what's called a smart growth plan. And our town doesn't have what's traditionally known as Main Street America. We're very hamlet driven. Cumberland Head is very unique compared to Cliff Haven and Katyville to Morrisonville, so on and so forth. So in our smart growth plan, we are looking at places like Tom Miller, Smithfield Boulevard, Consumer Square, interestingly enough, has about as much traffic as Wolf Road down near Albany. Okay? So yeah, we're looking at a number of those things. The smart growth plan is, they're currently working on that. We got a grant, and they will be making a series of recommendations. So I imagine that might be one of them.
The reason I asked the question is you see some of the growth, like the new bank having in on the corner over there, on the corner of Smithfield, and I often wondered why they weren't forced to make a stacking lane and get that extra turn signal in there. It was part of planning.
What'd you say?
Another bank's going in on Smithfield too.
Yep, further down. Yep. There have been some changes in that department too. Phil Von Bargen, who was a long-term employee, is no longer in that department. Trevor Cole is now the department head. I would argue that the town is going to go through a series of personnel changes. And I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just there's a lot of people that have been there for 20 plus years, and you'll see some retirements and changes and stuff. The town is growing, and we still have our challenges. I'll be the first person to admit we don't get it perfect all the time. The reason the board is having this meeting, we didn't used to do public town hall meetings. It used to be, if you want to come to our meeting, you get 5 minutes to talk to us. That's it.
I was like, that's enough.
The town of Plattsburgh is extremely fortunate to bring on a young guy like Trevor Cole in the planning department.
Yes, we are.
He's a good man. I don't know what he's being paid, but I'll tell you what, he's a very cooperative person to work with. I've worked with him on several projects of my own, and he's a tremendous guy. So he's a real asset to the town.
And he wants to work with you.
Yes, he'll work with you.
Yeah.
He's a very good person.
He is.
Yeah, Norm, he has vision too. He tries to be strategic in his outlook for the town of Plattsburgh, and he's doing a really great job on the smart growth plan. opportunity.
Who's this? again?
Trevor.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a vision.
Yeah, He's sharp.
He doesn't just work day in and day out. He's thinking
He
ahead.
has a really good assistant too,
Oh, yeah, that, the whole department.
really,
Yeah,
really, she's dynamite.
I don't have anything else.
Michael, what percentage, if any, of the fine money comes into the town?
I don't know it offhand.
Not an awful lot, but it's something.
Well, that needs to be changed.
I honestly couldn't tell you the direct percentages. It's nominal because, you know, everybody, the state, you know, everybody's kind of got their pinch out of it, so. I guess the last thing that I'd like to offer as a wrap-up is just a reminder, if you see me out in public, you see any of these folks out in public, please approach us, let us know. We'll always hear a concern, but if you just want to chat about whatever, and, you know, call us. Town Hall, I have an open door policy. Please stop by, whether you're paying your water bill, you're pulling a permit, you have a question, feel free to come on in. Our board meetings and work sessions are every Thursday at 6 p.m. We do allow for people to make public comment at all of those. That was not something that we used to do. It used to be just during the board meetings. So any Thursday at 6 p.m. if you have something to say. But the other part to it is if you want to talk, please understand you don't have to come before the board to share your questions, comments, or concerns. Pick up the phone, stop by.
I just want to say though, I wear a disguise out in public, so it's going to be hard to find me.
Pardon me?
I would just like to
Put a
say,
hat on, you know.
I would just like to say thank you to everybody for taking the time out of your evening to be here. And I'll add this, and hopefully Michael doesn't get mad at me. All of the meetings that I've attended since January, when I was appointed to the board, this is the most interesting. I think this is the most informative. And my hope as a board is that maybe we do this more than once or twice a year, because I think this is where we get the genuine feedback from the people. And like Michael said, we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be able to solve everything, but we want to do the right thing, and the way to do the right thing is to make sure that we hear the people.
I've been on board for 15 years now, going on 16. And I'm going to say that this board works very well together with a wide variety of opinions and backgrounds. I'm really pleased to be on this board. It's not that the others didn't work, but this one is it just works really well together. And all of our plans and everything, we're looking toward the future. Not just looking at us, but looking at our children, our grandchildren, and how can we sustain the town? How can we make it better for the people that live here?
Michael, one more question. We live on Shirley Avenue. As you know, you come in the house there once, twice, whatever. Anyway, we have some spots up there that have cars in the yard. Some don't have license plates on, some do, but they don't drive them. Just to keep the car there, and if somebody says there's a license plate, oh, that's okay. We have it all checked out. There's not only that place where we live.
Sure.
That's just down the street from us. And it looks kind of rough and tough.
I'm going to tell you, there's something called an OTR. It's an order to remedy. We issued 150 of them this year during our spring cleanup this year. Okay, 150 of them, townwide, not in one particular area. We are actually tomorrow, thank you to Barb, helping to lead the charge to do an interview for an additional staff person in the codes department, talk about growth, okay? We have businesses like Schluter and Nova and all these other things. For us to maintain a certain insurance rating, we need to make sure those are inspected every year. That's become a critical component. But we also recognize the quality of life items that you're identifying, we need to do better on, and we're working on that. So by having a third person in that office, it will help us to do better on that item. So I agree, yes.
I appreciate it.
And you know, the last little thing about an OTR, we don't go out and, like, you know, say Chuck, you know, it's just really slow. And we have to give him an OTR, okay? We don't take a piece of paper and wave it in front of everybody though and say, you know, Chuck got an OTR. But he also has the opportunity to defend his position where he can go to town court. And because you know how busy our court system is, and people have the ability to defend themselves, that can get kicked around for a while. So people will say, well, you haven't done anything about this guy with his cars or the grass, or it's not that we're not doing it, is government by its design is clunky. It just is, it really is. So if you hear about things or see things and you want some insight, we'll do our best to kind of say, yeah, they got an OTR, or we're addressing it through the rules and regulations that are available to us. For privacy matters, we sometimes, we don't want to embarrass people, but we'll try to share information that's public
Right,
record.
but we're going to try to get truck cleaned up by November.
The last thing I'll share with you, just because I find this really fascinating, and it's probably one of the biggest things that I'm most proud of. It's the makeup of our board. Our board has a really interesting dynamic, and I think it's why it works right now. Tom is the second oldest person ever to serve on our board. Okay. Barb is the first person of color to ever serve on our board. It took 230 years for 2 women to serve on our town board. Meg LaFave is the other individual. So we have 2 women serving. I'm the youngest ever elected town supervisor. Meg is the youngest ever elected town council member. We have multiple political affiliations here, okay? We're multi-generational. We have a cross-representation, but ultimately what guides us is your thoughts and opinions. And I often tell people, I do not agree with my wife 100% of the time, nor does she agree with me 100% of the time. I guarantee that. Our commitment is, we know that we're not always going to agree. We'll always listen to you, and we will do our best. I mean this sincerely. I really believe that this is a core value of what guides the people here. We will do our best to make decisions on your behalf. We don't always get it right, though. We don't always get it right. And if we get it wrong, let us know, and we'll do better the next time.
It's okay if you let us know if you got it right, too.
Well, it's always a challenge. The problems of the past and problems of the future to come. It's always a challenge. And as you say, you can't remedy them all in a short period of time. It's just an ongoing situation. And I hope you're just not putting out fires, but you're advancing.
We're trying. So, can we give Bob Fuller a round of applause? Thanks for. Thank you very much. Like I said, I do have business cards. If people want to stay in contact, we'll be happy to